Welcome to the day in history for April 27th, day 42. Today we're going to start out with a song. I really like this song. I used to be able to play a tiny bit of it. I'll bet you some of you guys watching it know how to play. Okay, we're going to stop there. Now, I love doing ones about musicians because, well, as you know, I like classical music. And as you know, I played Beethoven a lot in class. So much that some of you guys kind of got a little bit sick of it. Maybe just a little bit. But today's day in history is the day that Ludwig van Beethoven composes his famous piano piece, Für Elise. Okay, we are in 1810. I'll let you guys write this down. All right, we are in Vienna, Austria, and we have to think about what's happening in the 1790s. Now, Beethoven grew up in a time, we're talking about 1810 right now, but a lot of Beethoven's musical starts came in the 1790s. Now, we're talking about the French Revolution, the American Revolution, Industrial Revolution, machines and factories. The kings that used to be super powerful are not so powerful anymore. The world is really changing. And Beethoven finds himself as one of the main composers in this time period. And you remember, we've talked about this before. This was a time period without movies or Netflix or all these sports or all these other things. Music was a huge social and cultural thing. It was very central to a lot of people's lives. Music was the rock star of the day, the superstar of the day, the sports star of the day. These were the composers. So keep that in mind as we keep talking. Okay. Now, this is Für Elise, probably one of the most, some people argue, the most well-known melody in the history of music. Who hasn't heard Für Elise? Yeah, pretty much everyone's heard Für Elise. It's actually not called Für Elise. Well, everyone calls it Für Elise, but it's also called by the name Bagatelle number 25 in A minor. Yeah, Bagatelle number 25 in A minor. I learned that today. Okay, now this is the version that we most commonly know. And for those of you that know how to play Für Elise, this is what you're used to seeing. It's not a difficult piece of music. It's not super complicated, it's not super fast, it has a really pleasing melody, and people really like it. But let's talk a little bit about Beethoven. Now, Beethoven was born in Bonn, Germany, and his dad, as the story goes, was very abusive, very mean, very strict, and wanted to turn Beethoven into what we call a child prodigy. Now, a child prodigy is somebody that is just amazing at an early age. And so Beethoven's dad really made him work. And it's said that it would be considered abuse. So there's a lot more to that story, but in general, historians see Beethoven's father as not being the best father. So now, when he was 10, he went to study with Christian Neef, this guy here. There's a lot of pictures of people in today's day in history because we're really just talking about music, and you can't really get a picture for music, right? And so we're going to talk about the people that influenced the music. Now, this is Christian Neef. He was an organist, and Beethoven went to study with him around 10. Now, a little bit later, as his dad couldn't make as much money. His dad was a singer in a choir, but he was also an alcoholic, and he drank a lot of alcohol, and his voice started going away. He couldn't make as much money, and so at age 14, Beethoven gets hired as the assistant organist with a local group there, and starts making money for his family. Now, there's a story that in 1787, he went to Vienna to study with some of the composers there. And some people think he might have met Mozart. We don't know for sure, but Mozart was the #1 guy in music at the time. And But there's not a whole lot of information about Beethoven and Mozart crossing paths, but they were in the same city at the same time, and they were both musicians. So who knows? Now, a little bit later, 1792, after Mozart died, one of Mozart's students named Haydn was kind of taken with Beethoven, and Beethoven actually studied with Haydn. I haven't listened to a whole lot of Haydn. I love Mozart. Haydn, I don't know, not so much, but maybe I just need to listen to more of it. But definitely Beethoven has found a way, has found himself in this circle of great composers. And as we continue, his life gets a little more complicated. Now, in 1815, his brother dies, and he goes into what we call a custody battle, which is where he's arguing with his brother's wife about who should take care of his son. And Beethoven ends up taking care of his son, getting custody of it. But it was a really difficult time for Beethoven. Also, Beethoven's going deaf. Now, this is a really interesting topic that we need a lot more time to talk about. But Beethoven was going deaf, and towards the end of his writing career, he was writing music that he couldn't hear. And that's a really interesting topic because he played music. He was an amazing pianist. And so he would write his own music and he would play it and he would enjoy it and he'd write it for other people. But later in life, he couldn't actually hear what he was writing. And so many historians, musical historians, talk about how Beethoven was writing for a future audience. He was writing for somebody else. And his music, some of his greatest music, like the Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy, he couldn't actually hear that. And that's kind of crazy to think about. Now, we just talked about him going deaf. I probably should have talked about that on this slide. But you know, it did have a huge impact on his life. It would have to. He was also very shy and not very social. And he fell in love with quite a few women and they all rejected him. Many women really respected him for his music, but they weren't really interested in him as like a husband. And this was pretty tough on him. Now, he wrote so many amazing pieces of music. I would say, without a doubt, he is my number one favorite composer. I listen to his symphonies probably at least once a week at some point. They're on my playlist. Sometimes when I'm trying to do schoolwork or concentrate, I'll put on Beethoven's Second Symphony or the Eighth Symphony, which I really like, because I know it, I like it, and I think it's amazing, and it really is. Now, in 1867, this gentleman here, Ludwig Noll, finds a piece of paper in a desk drawer. And this is the story of Für Elise, because Für Elise was never heard by anybody until after 1867. Now, Beethoven wrote it in 1810, and the story goes is that he wrote it for this woman here, Teresa Malfatti. Now, in 1810, Teresa Malfatti was a pianist and a musician that was around Beethoven, and it's said that Beethoven fell in love with her and proposed to be married. And she immediately denied him, said, "No, I don't want to be your husband." And so people think, most historians believe, because they did find Für Elise in part of her property, in one of her drawers, was that Beethoven wrote this song for her, and then after she denied him, he just stuck it away. Now, the musical piece was found by this music historian. It was transcribed or written out by him, and that is the version of Für Elise that you listened to earlier and that we know today. So this scribbled on piece of paper with Für Elise on it is found, rewritten, and then the original copy disappears. No one knows where it is. And Beethoven's handwriting was so bad that historians think that when Ludwig Noel found Für Elise, he actually read it wrong, and it was actually Für Theresa, or because Für means for in German, for Theresa, and not for Elise. And so there's been a big kind of mystery surrounding who Elise is. Most historians believe that it is this lady here. Now, his music, like I said, is amazing. It's listened to all over the world. It's recognized all over the world. And if we look at the New York Philharmonic, which is one of the most, I'd say, well-known symphonies in the world, if we look at what they perform, the number one is Richard Wagner, okay, and number two is Beethoven. Of the most performed songs come from Beethoven and Wagner. So, as we can see, Beethoven's a pretty popular guy. Now, and that's Für Elise, the song that we know and love, came from a drawer. And luckily, I remember at the end that I forgot to give you the big idea, because I got distracted by the beautiful music. The big idea I had was chance can play a large part in great discoveries. Let me say that again. Chance, like just happening to find something, can play a large part in great discoveries. Can you imagine if Ludwig Noel never would have gone to that desk drawer and found Für Elise? We would be without that piece of music. Beethoven would still be a great composer, but we wouldn't have Für Elise. And you wouldn't go right now and play it if you have a piano. So, try and learn how to play Für Elise. It's a great song. Thanks for the day in history. See you guys.